Hey guys, what's up? It's Samantha, and today I'm going to be talking through my June TBR with you guys. Now, I am normally very much a mood reader. I just pick up whatever sounds good next, but with kind of the lack of structure in my life right now since I'm furloughed, I created a firmer TBR for the month of May, and it was really successful. I think I ended up reading about 70% of the books that were on my TBR, and then the other 30% of books I read were mood reads or something shiny that caught my eye, or I realized I'd read too many dense fantasies in a row and I needed to throw a romance or a contemporary in to lighten the mood. But I am really excited to be talking through these books with you guys. I have a ton of ARCs on this list, as well as the books from May that I'm carrying over that I didn't get to, and a fantasy series I'm excited to finish, and a reread I'm in the middle of, so all good things. Without further ado, I'm going to jump into the books. The first book is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and this was originally slated to come out this summer, but because of Corona, a lot of YA release dates have been changed, and this one got bumped to February 2021, but I still would really like to read this ARC. I've had some other librarian friends that have already read ARCs of this, and I've really loved it. This is a West African-centered fantasy story, I think featuring blood magic. I don't really know too much about it, and I'm okay with that. I usually go into books not knowing that much other than like a 1 or 2 line blurb when I pick up ARCs. The next one is an epic fantasy series that I've been wanting to read for forever, and I've had this sitting on my shelf for 6 months and I haven't read it yet, and that is the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. And I'm very excited for this. I got the whole trilogy for Christmas and I cannot wait to jump into this. I'm guessing I'm probably going to save this for the end of the month because I have a feeling once I read the first one, I'm going to want to read the next 2 in quick succession, and I tend to be a person who doesn't like to leave a lot of time between series. I like to sort of read them all back to back, and yeah, I'm excited to read this. I didn't get to a couple of my heftier fantasy books because I fell down the Dresden hole in May, and this is one that I'm really looking forward to that I didn't get to. The next book I have is The Empire of Dreams by Rae Carson, and this follows Red, who is a character who's a small child in the Girl of Fire and Thorns series. I think she shows up in the 2nd or 3rd book. I can't remember. It's been a while since I read the trilogy and the whole story sort of blends together in my mind. But I actually read about a 1/3 of this in the ARC and I really liked it, but there's some pretty heavy stuff in here involving child abuse, and with all the stuff that was going on in the world, it was just really, really heavy, and it kind of was turning my stomach, and so I decided to set it down and come back to this. But I did have an ARC of this, but then I purchased a finished copy. I pre-ordered a finished copy with my own money, but I am excited to read this because Girl of Fire and Thorns is one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. It's just like excellent. I love Rae Carson. The next book is The King of Atolia by Megan Wallen Turner. I read the first 2 books, I want to say at the end of last year or the fall of last year, and I really enjoyed them. And this is the problem. What happens when I let time sit between series is all of a sudden it's been half of a year and I have not continued on with the series, even though I own 3, 4, and 5 and they're sitting on my shelves. This is a sort of Greek Roman inspired fantasy story, and it follows Eugenides, who is this thief. At least the first one does. Like, there's a lot of spoilers if I talk about the second book at all, and he is sort of pulled out of jail to go on this quest to steal an unstealable object, and there's a lot of politics, and they're really, really good. I don't know why I didn't immediately jump into the 3rd one, but I really liked these books and I'm excited to continue. The second book was like even better than the first one, so I'm hoping that pattern continues. The next book that is a carryover from May is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. I have heard mixed reviews on this, but based on the people who I've heard reviews that are positive, they're people that I tend to have similar feelings on towards books, so I'm excited to read this. I've liked all of the Jay Kristoff YA that I've read, so I'm excited to read an adult book from him. And yeah, all I know is that there's like an assassin training academy school thing, and there's footnotes, and some people really hate the footnotes and some people really like the footnotes, so we will see how I feel about the footnotes. Then the last book that's a carryover is actually a book that I started and got a couple chapters into, and then I read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and sort of fell into that as opposed to this, because I'll sometimes start like 4 or 5 books all at once, and this got put to the side. I really want to read this. This is a thick boy. I'm thinking about using an Audible credit for the audiobook because it's an Audible exclusive. I can't get it through Libby. And doing that to alternate between reading and listening, because sometimes with thick books that can help me get into them a little bit. So jumping into the books that are new to the list for June, I'm continuing my Lord of the Reeds reread. This is probably the at least 10th, 12th, 15th, I don't know, time I've read the series. It's probably going to be the 25th time I've read Two Towers because this is my favorite out of the entire series, which I think might be like an unpopular opinion. I really don't like Return of the King very much, and it's the one I've reread the least, but I have not read these at least since college, and I am almost 31, so I am long overdue for a reread. I think I read The Hobbit a few years ago. Maybe when I was in grad school I might have read it for a class, but I haven't read this in a while, and I love The Fellowship of the Rings, and I think that there's a lot that I didn't pick up on as a kid, like nuance. Also, I'm way more into like the lore and the songs and a lot of that stuff that I sort of glazed over as a kid. I was just like, I don't care about this, let's get to the adventure, I want sword fighting, so I'm appreciating this a lot more as an adult. The next book is, I think, the only romance on this list, and that is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. I do have a soft spot for adult contemporary romance, and I'll usually read a couple every month. I read them really quickly, they're fun, they're fluffy. It's nice when my brain starts to feel overwhelmed. They're usually like my palate cleansers between fantasies and not feel like I have to keep track of 8,000 different world building elements. So this was a book of the month thing that I picked up, and I'm excited to read it. Next, I have another arc. This is a YA fairy tale fantasy retelling, Cinderella is Dead. I don't know too much about this except this is taking place after the Cinderella fairy tale, but I have heard there's a female-female romance, and I have heard generally good things about this. I think I read the first chapter. I was going through a box of arcs at work because publishers send us like boxes of all the arcs, and I'll sometimes read the first chapter or 10 pages or something of a book to see if I vibe with the writing style, and I remember reading this and being like, huh, I'm interested. So excited to see what I think about this. Then next on my list is a book that I'm already about 45 pages into, but this is a library book, and I have a stack of library books that I've had sitting here since before the library closed almost 3 months ago, and I still haven't read them, but I was looking to pick up a YA contemporary, and this is When You Were Everything by Ashley Woodfolk, and I like it so far. It's actually not a romance-centered YA contemporary, which is refreshing. It's about a friendship falling apart, which I think is really interesting. I haven't read too many books like that, and I'm always down to find contemporary for teens to recommend, because I am a teen librarian, so I also read with a focus of reading to be able to recommend and talk about books to teens, so I'm interested to read this and see how I feel about it so far. I like it a lot. We'll see how I feel about this once I read the other like 90%. Next, I have a big stack of e-arcs, which I will just be reading on my Kindle. The next one is an adult fantasy, and it is The Obsidian Tower by Melissa Caruso, and that comes out tomorrow, June 2nd. I don't remember anything about this, except I think it was like a dark adult fantasy written by a woman, and I was like, okay, yes, sign me up, because I'm trying to read more adult fantasy written by female authors. If you've seen my YA fantasy, crossover fantasy issues video, then you'll know why that's like a really important topic to me. Next, we have Forest of Souls by Lori Lee, and again, I don't know anything about this except it has a Charlie Bowater cover, and I think there's something with spiders. Literally don't know anything about this except dark YA fantasy, and I've heard good reviews, and apparently when I read the synopsis, it sounded good to me. But this comes out on June 23rd, and this is like seriously the year of Charlie Bowater covers. I love Charlie Bowater, don't get me wrong, but it's a little much. The last June arc that I will be finishing is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, and I freaking love this book. I am a quarter of the way into it right now. I have been savoring it, just reading a chapter or two at a time because I don't want this series to end. The Daevabad trilogy is probably like my top 3 adult fantasy books of all time that I've ever read, like series. Top 5, top 3, I don't know, it's up there. It's really, really good. I love it so much. The second book knocked my socks off. Like the first book was was like solid, it was really good, and then the second one was just like, whoa, did not see that coming, and the way the series has evolved has just been like so magical. And then I have 3 arcs that are coming out July 7th that I would like to read in June. If not, I'll read them the first week of July, but they are The Princess Will Save You by Sarah Henning, which is another Summer of Charlie Bowater cover. And I think this is like supposed to be a book that's like subverting the damsel in distress trope. That's all I know about it. Don't know anything else. You can see I clearly read synopses before I request arcs. I don't. And then I have an arc of the sequel to The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. It's The Damned. I'm very excited for this. So this is the first series by Renee Ahdieh that I've liked. I read The Wrath and the Dawn, and if you ever want to laugh, feel free to go on Goodreads and read my review and like all my activity, like all my updates on it. I hated that book so much, so much. And I picked up The Beautiful just to read the first couple chapters. Sometimes I do that at work while I'm sitting on the reference desk. I'll pick up a book and just read a chapter or two so I get an idea of the writing style and the tone. That way I know who to recommend it to. And I was actually kind of hooked, and I don't like vampires. I wasn't a Twilight stan. I really liked The Beautiful so much. I was highly entertained. Was it quality literature? Probably not, but it was really entertaining, and so I'm excited to read the sequel, and hopefully there will be more like vampire things that go bump in the night goodness. That was one of my complaints with The Beautiful, was that there just was not enough vampire. There were things that were hinted at, like you got an idea that there were like bad dark things, but I'm really hoping for more things that go bump in the night in this one. And then I think this is my last arc on this list, is Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. I read an arc of Wilder Girls last year, and I liked it. I hated the ending. I feel like the ending is the most divisive part of that book. Some people love it, some people hated it. I hated the ending so much, but I really liked her writing style, and I was blown away by the first 80% of the book, and so I'm excited to read another book by her. Again, don't know what this is about, but knowing Rory Power, I'm guessing it's like feminist, girl power, isolated town, city. That's like what I'm thinking this probably is. And then last but certainly not least, I am planning on finishing all of the existing Dresden Files books this month. Currently on number 11, Turncoat, and I am about a third of the way into that, and I'll probably finish that by tomorrow. I've been finishing them in about 2 to 3 days a piece. I jump back and forth between the ebook and the audiobook. I think I've consumed all of them jumping back and forth. I don't think I've done one exclusively ebook or audiobook. There's ones where I've done proportionally more of each, but I enjoy it both ways. I like James Marsters' voice, though I do think he narrates Harry as a much more suave. I think he narrates Harry the way Harry sees himself, and not necessarily with some of the like weirdness, goofiness of Harry. But I still like James Marsters' voice quite a bit, and I can't complain. At this point, all of the books have completely run together in my head. I can't tell any of them apart. It's all just become one giant long story because I've literally just jumped from one to the next to the next. So like I know the plot line of all of the books combined, because after the first few are more episodic, and as you get into the series there's more there's still kind of that mystery of the week, but there's a lot of larger plots and things that happen that have ramifications down the line, and so you don't necessarily get resolution to all of the mysteries or problems or questions at the end of every book anymore. So I do not remember exactly what happens in every single one of them, but in general, I'm loving where the plot is going. I'm loving the character development. I'm liking them a lot more the farther I get into this. Still haven't had a 5-star. I don't know that there will be a 5-star in this series for me, but it's a lot of fun. And even though the first few were pretty shaky, I'm still glad I pushed through because I'm having a lot of fun with these. Like I said, I'm about a third of the way through number 11, Turncoat, and I'm planning on reading. I have them all written down on my phone because I can't remember the names of any of the books or the order that they go in. I just look on Libby for the next one. And it's Changes, which is 12, Ghost Stories, which is 13, Cold Days, which is 14, Skin Game is 15, And then I think Peace Talks is the next one that's coming out, and that comes out like at the end of June or July or something. It comes out this summer, and then there's another one coming out in September. All right, guys, that's everything I'm planning on reading in June. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and Goodreads for updates, and I will talk to you guys in my next one.